great turnout. Thank you all for being here. I want to introduce myself. I'm Robbie Kenzel. I'm the Arts and Cultural Affairs Liaison for the city in the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs. And I think you've already met Randy Marks, our Public Art Project Manager. And Randy asked me to help set the stage a little bit so that he can then introduce the project. And so I've been around the city a long time. That's why I get to set the stage. So in 2007, the city of Oklahoma City responded to the Oklahoma Department of Transportation's plans to move our elevated, antiquated highway a mile to the south. I don't know if many of you even remember that, but I sure do, because I used to drive under it every day. The highway structure caused a huge separation between the downtown core and the north bank of the Oklahoma River. And between those two sections, there was about 750 acres of underutilized land, a lot of abandoned properties, boarded properties, and just vacant. It was kind of scary. Nobody wanted to go there unless you had a reason to. You know, you might not have been as scared if you had a reason to. So by removing that interstate and constructing a depressed highway to the south, we were able to undertake our Skydance Bridge project, which was one of the top in the nation many years ago. And then under former Mayor Mick Cornett, a steering committee was formed and worked with the planning department and its consultants for 18 months, developing a plan known as Core to Shore. And Core to Shore is on the city's website. If you ever want to take time to read through it, it's huge, it's thick. But it was adopted by City Council in 2008. And it laid the groundwork for a lot of the development that has happened since that time. Like many elements from the Core to Shore plan were realized through Devon's announcement to build its story skyscraping tower and the TIF investment in downtown. So many of those improvements were made because of the influence of the Core to Shore plan. Also under MAPS 3, many of those projects were part of what was proposed in the Core to Shore plan, like the convention center that just recently opened in March, and the 70-acre park that is separated, the upper and the lower Scissortail Park that connects downtown to the river. So I wanted to give you a little bit of that history because you might not have ever heard of that. And then the year following the adoption of the Core to Shore plan in 2009 was when the Oklahoma City Council adopted the 1% for Art ordinance. And for those of you that have never really heard of what that ordinance is, it's 1% of the budgeted construction costs, not total project costs, but construction cost of any building or park or renovation of a building or park that is paid for with public funds on property that is public, owned by the city. And so I wanted to just give all of that to you to kind of set the stage then for Randy. That's the history lesson. And now Randy's going to deliver the project information.
So all of this area that Robbie is talking about is in Ward 6, Oklahoma City's Ward 6. And we're really happy to have Ward 6 Councilor Jo Beth Hammond here with us today. Jo Beth, you want to, excuse me, Councilor Hammond, would you like to say something to everybody?
No, I like Jo Beth.
Okay.
No, this is the second time that I've gotten to participate in kind of being on the selection committee for one of these. But I think the first time I didn't get to come to this side of the meeting. So I just kind of I'm still kind of learning how all of these projects take place. And especially since this is in Ward 6, I just wanted to be here and kind of multitask, but listen in and just thank you all for your interest in this project, because I'm really excited to see some life come to that space just at the Riverside neighborhood there, just south of the river. So, or sorry, south of the highway and north of the river. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Anytime that we get one of our counselors to be on selection committees, we enjoy it a lot. And we really like the way that Councilor Hammond jumped in and said, you know, I would like to see a couple of area stakeholders on this committee too, which is, I was just getting ready to ask her that question and she gave me that information. So we're looking forward to really some very, very local participants on the selection committee. You can also look in the RFQ to see not names of people, but kind of positions of other people that will be on the selection committee. We're going to do a quick park overview, and what I'm going to do is share my screen, and we're going to look at actually the presentation for Lower Park that was created by Hargraves, now Hargraves Jones, particularly Mary Margaret Jones. And so give you a good overview. The link to this, by the way, is in the RFQ, but in case you haven't seen it already, it's just going to take us a couple of minutes. And I think it'll be good for us to see it as a group here. And if if this is working properly, you should see a photograph of the spray grounds at Scissortail Park. And if you don't see that, then speak up. So we'll go through this. This part is actually from the website, Hargrave Jones website, and it's about the entire park. We'll watch this little video here. Now, we're not going to do that. Watch it. Be sure and go to this site and watch it on your own time. This is a photograph, a drone shot looking from that would be the southeast towards the northwest. There's the band shell. This is called I think this is called the hill, isn't it? Anyway, creating kind of a little bit of an amphitheater with the band shell. And this is the promenade that starts up at Oklahoma City Boulevard and then extends all the way down through Lower Park. And we'll take another look at that in a little bit. The lake that was constructed, and the reason why it has the odd shape was to create a sense that it is much bigger than what it actually appears to be. If you don't have a comment to make or question right now, you might want to mute your microphone. Thank you. So anyway, the construction of this allows you to think that you're on a much larger body than you actually are. And the approach that was taken to the park was kind of a scorched earth policy. Hardly anything was saved in Upper or Lower Park. A few trees in Lower Park. Obviously in the Upper Park, you can't see it right now, but Union Station, which has since been annexed by the park, is still there. But basically it is brand new topography and planting. And in about 3-4 years from now, as it gets pretty well grown in, it's going to be even better than it is now. But it was open to just universal acclaim, and people love the place and love spending time in it. Another shot, people sitting on the hill and looking towards the stage. There's that shot again. And now you should be seeing a presentation by Mary Margaret Jones about the Lower Park.
You got it.
Okay. So this is the overall master plan. This is actually Myriad Gardens Park, but it shows, which is just immediately adjacent to downtown. The upper part of Scissortail Park is a couple of blocks south. We're hoping that there will be a corridor that will be maintained. This is private property across here, but we're hoping that there will be a corridor that leads from Myriad Gardens down to Upper Scissortail Park. The promenade that goes all the way down Upper Park. This is the highway. Skydance Bridge is here. And then this 7 or L, depending on how you're looking at it, is Lower Park, which connects to Wiley Post Park that takes you all the way to the river. So looking more, I'm going to go back to that other image first. So right in this area is the location where taking flight, light as a feather, is going to be installed, and Robbie's going to talk about that in just a moment. And then right here is where Skydance Bridge is, and the location for the project we're talking about is right here. Now, if you were to go a little bit further down here across the river, you would see historic grain elevator that is a prominent vertical feature. Or if you were looking off down to the southwest, you would see Mount St. Mary's. So the idea here, as envisioned by the landscape architect with this particular piece, is this is another vertical element that connects, that's kind of acts as a landmark going from all the way from downtown where the Devon Tower and other not quite so tall buildings are, to taking flight, to Skydance Bridge, to whatever this piece is going to be, and then onto the vertical elements on south of the river. So here again, we're looking at Lower Scissortail Park, and this is going to be the location. This is another bit of topography that is being added. This is called Overlook Hill, and if you were in Oklahoma City now and down in this area, you would see that little hill under construction. These are some add alternates that may be added, and I'll say that the overall feature of the lower park is less programmed than the upper park. So there's going to be more natural and naturalistic areas. The emphasis is on being able to wander around in unprogrammed space, whereas so much more of upper park is programmed. Having said that, however, a soccer field has been added, will be added to lower park. This is another view. See the Whispering Pines, Woodland Park, various open lawns, and these are renderings. We're going to look ahead at. So here is Overlook Hill. So imagine you're in a drone looking down on Overlook Hill. You look over to Knuckle Plaza, and then there is the location for the sculpture. Now, Mary Margaret is in love with the sculptor Jonathan Borofsky, and by permission uses an image of one of his works as a placeholder. So this is not an expectation, it is just a placeholder. And then there's Knuckle Plaza again with the location for where the sculpture is going to be added. Now, so that is just a general park overview. And Robbie, would you like to talk about taking flight? And do you have any illustrations you want to show, or do you want me to pull something up?
I do, yeah, I have some here. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. So can everyone see my screen, the feather? So taking flight, it's F-Light. This is the second project from Studio KCA. When they originally were commissioned to do a sculpture for the approximate area here at the upper northeast corner of Upper Scissortail Park back in 2019. And what happened is right about the time that they were about ready to order their materials, we had to ask them to not order those materials because we found out that a project had been proposed just across the street that was very similar in size and nature. And what we didn't want were two fairly close to identical pieces. Maybe one was, kind of articulated a different way, one was vertical, but they were very large orbs, and we just didn't want that, two that were so close together, because it's very important to the Arts Commission that all of the public art in the city's collection be unique in nature, first of all. And so, in their work to heavily, curate and magnify the public's experience and make it as authentic as possible, they just, knowing that, they just didn't want that to go forward. So they recommended that we undertake with the commissioned artist team a new sculpture. And so we went ahead and prepared a package of thoughts, sent it to the artists. They were very familiar with the site, and they came back with 2 different designs, and this is the one that was selected by the committee. And this will be going, the amendment to the contract with Studio KCA will be going to City Council on the 25th of May. But you can see here how it's oriented on the corner. Let me make sure. Here's another view. You can see the Omni in the background. Another view with the Omni. Here it is at night. They're looking at some fiber optic lighting and possibly some lighting from either beneath or above. And that's all to be explored, of course, when their contract amendment is finalized. And so you can see originally we were going to have to move trees and benches, and it was going to cost, the city some money. So that was one of the requirements for the new work, is it causes little disruption to the park as possible. And so they were able to do that. And here you can see it's 31 feet tall and 10 feet wide. And it will be white so that it will glow at night. Hopefully it will be a little bit sparkly at night. That's what we hope to work on with them. And it will be installed approximately the 3rd, if approved by council, it'll be approximately the 3rd quarter of 2022 when that is installed. So that's all I have to say about taking flight, Randy.
Okay, we're going to do a quick RFQ overview, then we'll open it up for questions. And when we do, we're going to ask that you use the raise your hand function. We'll unmute you, or you will be able to unmute yourself at that point, but we're not going to open up the meeting for a free-for-all again, as fun as that may be. So the RFQ, if you go to Bidsync, this is what you see. So this is $121,000 art award. That's the total amount of money that is available. So the artist or artist team that is selected will have that budget of $121,000 to accomplish the entire piece. Bid deadline is 2 weeks from today, on May the 19th. And you can see that the artwork sought is a sculpture to be installed in Knuckle Plaza. Well, why is it called Knuckle Plaza? Because of the shape. If you look at it in plan view, it's the place where the promenade that comes down from Upper Park transitions over to this Robinson Street sidewalk right here. So it actually kind of looks like a knuckle, hence the name. The location of the art will be right there. And as we alluded to earlier, the sculpture is envisioned to have a very strong vertical element. That doesn't mean that that is the only thing that you can propose if you happen to be a finalist, but there is a stated preference of that. We expect artists to have their own individual vision of things, but it pays generally to pay attention to what the RFQ has to say. We'll talk about the other meetings that will take place for those that will be finalists in just a little bit. So these are some things that when I polled members of the selection committee, some various themes that they felt like should be passed on in the RFQ. Trees. So Scissortail Park is now an accredited arboretum. One of the committee members suggested that kind of a lighthearted touch would be nice for this part of the park. Historically, this area was called, along South Robinson, was called Hubcap Alley, and there was building after building that sold obscure automobile parts. It was really kind of an interesting long junkyard way back in the day. So that was one reason that people would frequent this part of Oklahoma City way back when. There were a couple of artist studios down in that area too, and great old buildings for them. Unfortunately, those were all lost. First American culture. So at the time that Oklahoma City was founded on April, whatever, 1889 in the land run, there were still Kiowa Indian villages along what is now the Oklahoma River. So, and there had been for the previous 10,000 years at least. So the first American culture has been around many, many, many times longer than the city, and that's deeply embedded in this part of the world. If you're not already, if you're from somewhere else and not familiar with that, that would be something you might want to look into. You're not limited to these things. We expect you to do research on your own if you're a finalist. And so just because we mention these things doesn't mean that you need to incorporate any or all of these. If you happen to be a finalist, do your own research and find out what you can tell us about ourselves that we may not already know. We are particularly looking for, or not looking for, anything that is hackneyed, references to the oil industry, to wind, to tornadoes. You're probably not going to get too far with those concepts. So if you are a finalist, we encourage you to look a little bit further and think of something original that can be said artistically to the citizens of Oklahoma City and anybody else that visits here. Here's the link that I mentioned earlier as part of your research. You might want to take a look at that. And then we'll look at what, if you are not already registered in Bidsync, we will cover that at the very end of this meeting. So we're not going to talk about that right now. The things that you are asked to put into Bidsync when you submit. If you have a team, please, the names of all the team members along with how to contact each one individually. And on that same piece, you can put references for each team member. We do not want letters. We only want names of people as references and how they want to be contacted. On your artist statement, you cannot propose a design. You can't submit a design. We're not looking for that. We're looking for images of, which we'll get to in a minute, images of your past work. You'll be selected on the basis of that. But in your statement, you can talk about how you may approach this particular project. So we ask you to keep it brief. Don't go on for pages and pages because nobody is going to read it, quite frankly. But the selection committee can read about how you would approach this project, and you may be able to give some revelatory information in your artist statement. Resume for, again, for every member of your team or yourself, please keep it short. Again, there is nothing, we're not impressed by the weight of a resume. Everything that you need to say really can be said on one page, and that doesn't mean 8-point type either. So you're trying to make an impression quickly, so use discretion in what you put on that page and try to communicate directly to the selection committee what you think is really important about the work that you have done recently and in your career. Submit 8 images. That's 8 images, whether you're an individual or a team. There's, if you have a team and you have a team manager, that you don't have to show any images for the team manager. We ask that we be able to really see the broad range of work that can be done by the team. So be sure and include images for everybody, and then an image ID sheet. And I'm going to go forward here just a little bit to show you an example. So it should look something like this. Put the team or the name or the team name at the top, a thumbnail image of the work, and then this information out to the side. And you will do that for 8 images. Okay, again, this is all in the RFQ. Here's our timeline. So here's where we are right now, Wednesday, May 5th, with this non-mandatory meeting. 2 weeks from today is the deadline. The first selection committee meeting will definitely be on June 2nd, as it so happens. The mandatory site tour will not be set in stone until we have that first selection meeting, but it will probably be right around that date of June 16th. If you know that you are going to be out of town, out of the country at that date and cannot attend, there's no point in you making a submission unless you can get a designee there. But we want the artist or artist teams to be in attendance, and this will be an in-person meeting as close as we can get to the site in Lower Scissortail Park. So we'll be working with maps to get access to the area if we can. By the way, for those of you that may be from somewhere else, MAPS stands for Metropolitan Area Projects. And this has been an ongoing 25-year redevelopment of Oklahoma City that has been funded by a series of 1-cent sales taxes that we have voted on ourselves. Final presentations will be very close to Wednesday, July 28th. And then after that, those are, we go through the various contracting and so on. We anticipate the installation for the final work to be July or August of next year.
Some of those images that you showed from Mary Margaret Jones, or I'm sorry, those weren't on the Hargraves website. Would you be able to send those out? They have a better showing of that park area, the knuckle area. And then also there was like a snaky kind of object in there as well.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the way that this will be handled. So this will actually go in as a question in Bidsync. And those are public record, and there is a link to the city website where those can be accessed. And so that will show up in Bidsync before the end of the day Friday.
The other thing I want to caution everybody about too is, remember, you're not designing at this point. You're just deciding if you want to submit. So if you really focus on your submission and make that the best you can, typically we don't even provide presentations like that until we get to finalist status. You know, the 3 finalists would get that because they're the ones that need to begin, you know, working on the prep to even go to the mandatory site tour. So I just want to caution you on, I want to make sure nobody's designing without being paid a fee, and make sure nobody thinks that even if Randy provides that under Bidsync, you're not supposed to start designing now. Do not work on it because we're not paying you. Only the finalists that are selected will get paid, and they should be using that work to then prep for their design. Okay.
Okay, was it Harry that had a question? Okay, let's see. Okay, you should be able to unmute now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. In the prospectus, it mentions that the selected artist or team will need to hire a project manager, a local project manager, and it crosses my mind that kind of throws another person in the chain of communication, and I wondered if you could just elaborate on that and explain, is that absolutely required, and what are the reasons behind that?
It is, and we intend for it to throw another person in the way. We are not your project manager, so unless you're going to be on site, if you're selected as the finalist, unless you're not as a finalist. If you can't be here for a meeting, and if you're selected, then you need a finalist to represent, you need a local representative to represent you. But if you are the one chosen for the project, we cannot be your project manager. And so you need somebody here that can respond quickly to situations that may come up, and that can go out and take the odd photograph that you need to see. So if you are within 120 miles, if you live within 120 miles and can be your own project manager, that's fine. But if you are in another part of the world, then definitely you need somebody here looking out for your best interests that can interface with us on a moment's notice.
Yeah, we had a multi-million-dollar project that would have been held up last year because of COVID had we not done this. So we've learned almost the hard way, thank goodness. We started doing this and the project was completed. So it's why it's a non-starter. We have to have that person on the ground here. Okay.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up, Harry, because that
Yeah.
was an important thing in the RFQ that I didn't go over. I want to read you something actually from the RFQ also that we didn't talk about. So this is in bold under somewhere in there. It is preferred that artists create a culturally diverse team, which will include at least one artist or apprentice artist who lives, works, or attends school within a 2-mile radius of the site. The Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs can aid teams in identifying potential artists or apprentices. This is a stated preference. We cannot require it, but it is something that you should give very serious consideration to. If you become a finalist, we can help you identify local apprentices or young artists that can be on the team. But we're very, very serious about wanting there to be local involvement in this. If you are from somewhere else, we're very happy to have you. We want artists from around the world represented in our collection, as we already have. But we feel like it's very important that that there be a local stake in the artwork as well. Again, let me clarify this. You do in your submission, you do not have to have an apprentice on your team in your submission. It's not required. If you become a finalist, then you may want to think about adding somebody at that point, and we can aid you at that point if you are not locally based.
Yeah, the other thing on the project manager, we have a pre-qualified artist pool of vetted artists that if you're a finalist, we would refer you to. And their bios are on there and you can see the type of work they do and you can talk to them. So you could talk to as many as you wanted to figure out who might be compatible with the type of work you do. So.
Okay, Seth, I see your hand. You should be able to unmute.
Okay, great. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Robbie, would it be possible to get a list of that pre-qualified pool?
Yeah, why don't I go ahead and put the link? Well, I can just, let's see.
We can put it on Bidsync.
How should we do this the best? Because we want everybody to have it. Should we make this another Bidsync question, Randy, so that everybody gets it?
Well, it's premature, isn't it? Because nobody
Right.
needs a manager now.
Right.
So I
So
don't
why
think-
don't you go ahead and submit, and then the finalists, we will provide those people too. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds all right.
We'll
That's
make
fine.
sure we have that note. for
All right.
Finalists.
That'd be great.
Other questions? No question, Helen? What? Okay, I want to, if you all are you do have a question? Let's see. You were there a second ago.
Uh-oh, did we lose her? Oh, there she
No?
is. She
Oh,
moved. Gosh.
Name moved around. Okay, now you can unmute.
Okay, well, I have a question about the budget and the goal to have a tall project, a 31 or a 60-foot tall project like the other works in the site. Considering that this is about a third of what the Feather project budget, and it's a very short timeline. So how flexible, and understanding you want a skyscraper kind of piece, how Can you talk more about that? What you would expect for how tall this might be and how tall that hill, Overlook Hill, will be?
The Overlook Hill is, let's see, I'm guessing right now because I don't know. We can find that out, but I'm guessing it is about around 30 feet elevation. On this particular piece, it is more important that we have a stellar piece of work. The vertical element, we're not expecting a skyscraper type of piece, but if one is guided in that way, then one should go in that direction. And you know what the selection committees are like. And you know that there's going to be a lot of discussion at the selection committee and further information given from the members of the selection committee. So it is quite possible at that time people will say, well, I think, the vertical element is great, but I think something else is more important. So the finalists will take all of that information into account and make a conceptual design report of something absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
If you are thinking about putting a team together, I suggest that you do not use a scattershot approach, which some people have used, but it doesn't seem to work very well for people. Very, very targeted teams where people can work, where people's styles mesh together seems to work a little bit better. We've seen some presentations be very, very effective and teams be chosen that are not full-time teams. There are, a few full-time teams out there that we see on a fairly regular basis. But and I would suggest also that in your statement that you make some comment about how you would work together as a team. That is certainly legitimate information to be in an artist statement. So if you know of somebody that you feel like is going to provide something that you don't have, consider making a team, but be very thoughtful about how you go about that. Okay, any other, it's now, let's see, 2:48. So technically we have 12 minutes left. Are there any further questions, comments? Mr. Hoffner, let's see. Okay. Michael, you should, yeah.
Hi, Randy.
Hello.
I'm curious if the apprentice question or any of the other strongly preferred elements of the RFQ will be quantified in some way when the finalists are judged. In other words, is there an evaluation rubric that puts a weight on this element of the project so we can know how much is at risk when we choose whether or not to do some of these things?
We choose not to quantify those things because we feel like that it actually ends up being a bit of an artificial benchmarks. So the finalists, so we're talking about the next stage now. Okay, in the first stage, it's the strength of your submission of past work that is really going to carry the day, plus how you describe that in the statement.